now heading to Austin, Texas, and this is where a pastor says that there are absolutely no biblical grounds for being anti trans. AJ has a story. AJ?
That's right. And this is Zach Lambert. He is a pastor at Restore Austin, which is a church in Austin, Texas, as you said. His claim is that there are absolutely no biblical grounds for being anti trans. The church that he leads at describes itself as a place for anyone to feel themselves, to embark on a journey of restoration through Jesus, who loves people without prejudice or qualification. Lambert says that his church has different values from the typical Christian. For example, they followed COVID-19 safety protocols. They acknowledge movements like Black Lives Matter and other civil rights injustices, but not everyone agrees with his views. Someone on social media say that Lambert is a wicked serpent, encouraging people into hell. This is not surprising, right? Because while Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio are some of the most progressive, if you will, areas in Texas, we still have some of the most anti-transgender legislations across the US. This story is from Newsbreak by Nick Mordewenk and on March 31st, 2025.
Thanks, AJ, for that introduction. And I'm just going to stick with you for a while because you kind of alluded to this when you were doing your introduction. But I wanted to ask you, how does political use of religious influence anti-trans legislation, and how can we push back without reinforcing Christian dominance in public discourse?
Pushing back is definitely something we can all do from our own homes. Call your representatives, let them know that you don't support the bills that they are pushing for, especially the ones that support Christian nationalists, right? As far as this specific story goes, to me, I don't really care if you want to be a progressive Christian. Like, if you're going to be a Christian and follow the Bible, then you kind of have to follow all of it, right? Like, it's not just like the bits and pieces that you like or that fit your bill, that fits whatever you want to believe in. So when people go and claim that, the Bible is metaphorical, no, that's metaphorical, and that's the Old Testament, and that we have a new covenant now, that does not make it more palatable, right? It doesn't make it less misogynistic, less hateful, transphobic, homophobic, racist, pro-slavery, all of these, it's just like that. So it really always baffles me when people say that, like, we don't follow the laws of the Old Testament anymore because, like, the Ten Commandments comes right from there. So, I mean, if you want to be less Christian nationalist, then, you might want to put the whole book away.
Jesus said that he did not come to destroy the law, but to come to fulfill it. That's what Jesus. Oh, sha ta 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 ta.
Those are Jesus' words.
Igbat Cadillac, give a dog a bone, said in
and quote him on that.
It's in red letterings, is what I'm trying to tell you. Rob, ain't in the red letterings, and give your take on it.
It's just frustrating all around.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so I am afforded the privilege as a white dude that the thing that I care more about is like actually talking religious argumentation and things like that. But like, we've been doing that for a couple thousand years and that's not very topical. Like, people are actually dealing with the effects of this. And then I could be like, I want to go over on the ontological argument, but dealing with this, it's in some ways kind of interesting to watch Christians fight each other. That's always lovely. I say that purely selfishly. But like, I'm disappointed in the pastor because, like, for example, he said, quote, "We're not your typical Christian," and I'm like, what is a typical Christian? Because I genuinely wonder if Christians, especially people who are pastors or in positions of power, right? Presumably the theologians, that if they talk to as many people about Christianity or religion as an atheist might, because again, what is a typical Christian? Is he going to say somebody who hates trans people? Well, what justification do they have for that? Or does they say that it comes from the Bible? And then he says in a tweet that the Bible has 0 verses against trans people. And so kind of like AJ was saying, you either need to take the whole Bible or none of it, but we know that doesn't work because a lot of them are going to take parts of it and say that it's metaphorical anyway. Okay, so now you have 2 different groups of Christians, some that say all and some that say all and some that say some. And then when you talk to the ones that say some, now you need to figure out which ones you interpret to mean that. And if this guy who's unwilling to take the whole Bible, I'm willing to bet because the Bible's pretty messed up, actually says that you can take the metaphorical sense, then who is he to deny the interpretation of another metaphorical understanding from someone else? So you're just damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I'd watch it and I go, this actually solves nothing. I mean, you're nicer to trans people and you're kinder to them and you're helping them out. That's cool and all. What if we just didn't, like what if we just didn't do the religious thing that's propagating it in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, like, even to your point, like, especially if you go back to what you were talking about what is a typical Christian, right? Almost, reminds me of, what's the dude's name that's on, the Daily Wire, Matt Waltz, I think that's his name, who said, "What is a woman?"
Sure.
Yeah, that guy. I mean, but like, if you put it that, like, what is a typical Christian? You have about over 45,000 different ways that you can interpret what a Christian is. I mean, because that's how many, denominations of Christianity and also cults and alludiments to Christianity that there are in the world, right? So can we really say that there's a typical Christian? Or can we just say that, hey, there is like some base things that are within the Bible itself that some people follow? Because I know, and I won't speak for every Christian because obviously I can't, but typically when you're talking to a Christian, there are going to be some things in the Bible that they follow and some things that they don't, or some things that they will take metaphorically, some things that they will take literally. And this is called cherry picking. And it is very, apropos to, the Christian lifestyle. But according to Christian apologists, all atheists are one way and one way only, and only atheism affects our worldview, which is satanic. So speaking of satanic, Kelly.
Yeah, because I look like Satan
all day. No, Kelly, I love you.
Okay.
But
because Satan's supposed to always appear as a handsome man, right?
Well, that's the reason why I said Kelly. Because obviously I was thinking of a handsome man.
And I am the handsomest man.
You're the handsomest of the handsome. I'm just going to say that right now. But
Kelly, not me.
Yeah, but no, Rob, you're pretty groovy yourself too.
No, I say, don't worry, I'm real pretty. It's good. I got fabulously cute hair.
Okay, right. Well, we got pretty, and we got handsome on the panel. I love it. Okay, but Kelly, please, give your take on the article and what your primary thoughts were when you read it.
I read it and I was trying to figure out what the whole point was. It was a Christian minister actually follows the words of Jesus. I was like, what the hell? And here, let me play God's advocate for a second. Did you know that when Jesus supposedly walked the earth, one of the lessons that he taught, one that was so incredibly amazing that almost every atheist I know follows it. In Mark 12:31, he says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself. There is no commandment greater than this." Now, I'm pretty sure that some of you Christians out there have neighbors that are trans, and there ain't nothing in the Bible that says anything about it, so you can stop worrying so much about it. You don't have to be mean to them. And another thing, this whole hang-up that you guys have with genitalia? I love the word genitalia. We should use it more in everyday language. But maybe in the future, you all should try to separate the pronouns from the penis. I think that'd be a good idea, too.
Speaking of genitalia, I don't think the verse was love thy neighbor, but only if you know what genitalia they have.
yes, yeah. Check his genitalia before you love him.
Check it out, yeah.
Check it out. Pull up them robes, people. Disrobe. We got to see what you're packing before we can see if we're loving you or not. You know, personally, I think that's a good Saturday night, but that's neither here nor there. This is not that topic. But, you know, but guys, I wanted to ask because, like, I think that brings up a point when it comes to what the edicts of Jesus are when it comes to Christianity and how you follow them, and how we treat people who may be marginalized or less than, or because like if you even look at the share of the population of trans people, it's like, isn't it like less than 2%? It's probably lower than that, I want to say.
So small.
It's like 1%.
Yeah. Thank you. So you know, you're talking about, but even if that is a very small population, they are no less human, and they also should be treated with dignity, respect, and they also should have the respect be integral to what the civil rights are for us today as human beings, right? And that should be blanketed no matter if a person is cis, if they're trans, whatever race they are, their ability level, the whole thing. I'm sorry, I'm getting on my box right here, but I'm going to get back down. But I want to ask you guys, and I want, you know, every person to go. I'm going to start with AJ since you introduced. No, actually, I want to start with Rob and Kelly, and then AJ since you introduced it. You know, is inclusion within religion enough, or should secular society push for more accountability from institutions that have historically excluded and harmed trans people? Rob, I'm going to start with you, then Kelly, then AJ.
So easily, yes. I think the secularity of the society is irrelevant to whether or not establishments should be more inclusive. That should just happen anyway. But that's kind of the position that I take, that being secular is the default position. You know, the famous way of saying to a Christian person, do you believe in X, Y, Z? And they say no. And I go, great. Yeah, you're an atheist in all those ways. I just go one God more. So the how secular a society is, I think, is not really relevant for should we include people. And in that case, sometimes maybe, actually. It depends on the actual establishment. In general, this is my position. Inclusion is great. Inclusion is not necessary. The thing to avoid is exclusion to the point of othering. The reason for that is because, like, we have spaces like there's like just, you know, women's groups that for various reasons, and then I would not be invited because I'm not a woman, and that's okay. But that group is created for a purpose in mind. So the real issue comes when the group is convening for a cause, and that cause is cruelty. When we are specifically trying to otherize, demonize, and destroy groups of people, that's a point at which we should probably step in. Secular or otherwise, it's everyone else's job to deal with that as well. So to me, inclusion isn't as important as not excluding, but that has to do with the very specific purposeful reason for why we are convening in the first place.
Not excluding on arbitrary reasons is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Like, hey, you want to come to, like, this is going to sound juvenile, but like, want to come to a book club? I don't like books. Then don't come.
Yeah,
I don't like them reading.
I was thinking of a gardening club too. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a garden.
I
Well,
like-
you know,
I don't
this
like
club
them
ain't for you.
I don't like
Exactly.
them reading the words. Them they make me upset.
But there becomes, but the problem then would be, right, hey, we have this book club. You want to come? Well, I only read the nastiest smut you can find possible. And they go, well, we shouldn't include you. And everybody else should go, whoa, hold up. it's still a book. We should include them and not exclude them based on their preferences on the overall topic.
Which is what I would say, because I would say, what is this book and where can I purchase it?
Where can I find it?
Kelly, what are your thoughts?
My first thought was that you said that they need to treat people with dignity and respect. And my first thought was, there's 45,000 sects of Christianity that can't even treat each other with dignity and respect.
That's
And
true.
you're expecting them to treat other people that
I
aren't
know,
treated
the
that
bar
way.
is too high. The bar is too
Yeah,
high.
right.
Enjoy the
Yeah.
process.
It's too high
Yeah.
there. That's all. Yeah. But how do we get people to be more inclusive is the actual question. And again, I think we need to educate people. We need to show people that those other people aren't others. They're people just like you are. And I think that is one of the easiest lessons to teach, because all you have to do is expose somebody to the other person. You can say, hey, this is my friend Bill. Bill, meet Dennis, and believe it or not, those two people, even if they're not of the same race, can still get along, right? It's amazing. It's fucking amazing. So I think that I think is the way to make people more inclusive, is just to expose people to the others.
Oh, I don't know, Kelly. I hear that Dennis only reads nonfiction. And that's
He only reads
Wait, guys, and you know where my mind went as soon as Kelly said expose. I was like,
and this guy I know from the gardening club only grows eggplants.
oh. How big are those eggplants is what I'm asking. Ooh, save me, AJ.
Oh,
Save
my
me, because
goodness.
I'm in a whole. This is not.
Let's move on.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. You already know Cynthia's disturbed. But go ahead, AJ.
You didn't expect me to act with dignity and respect, did you?
Yes, I did, because you're dirty just like me. But go ahead, AJ.
Let's. All right, I will bring it back to boring. I will bring it back to the boring article. Let's see. I don't even know what the question was. Never mind. But you know what? What I was thinking, this pastor was just wanting a pat in the back. That's what it seemed like to me. He just wanted to be like, oh, we are all nice. Like in these churches, come in, and then they reel you in, and then they'll probably show you like all the real story back there, right? Like, because come on, like you can't look at. He claims that there is no biblical grounds for being anti-trans, but then you have people pulling out verses like, a woman shall not wear a man's garment, and that's like, okay, then what are they talking about? Like, yeah, you can't be feminine, right? So as soon as you're feminine, then suddenly it's like, oh no, that's not good. Like, yeah. I don't know. So I don't know how to feel about this pastor specifically. Do I want people to be accepting? Of course, yes. But there's just no way around the hatefulness, transphobia, homophobia, racism that you see in the Bible. So I can't feel good about it.
I was gonna say, because he like you said, they're pulling out Bible verses like man should not wear women's clothing, and it's like he specifically says that we are unapologetically Christian. And I'm like, dude, that's actually the problem you're having, though, because you're fighting with other Christians and they're going to pull out Bible verses about how you're wrong. It's like the fact that he said the tweet to be like, there are no passages that support this. Okay, you're right. There is literally no passage that says specifically the word trans. Right. And like, that's not a useful point, because we're not the people that you need to convince. It's your fellow Christians, and you're going to have a hard time with that when you're still trying to hold on to your own book, which has its own problems.
And just to put a cherry on the top of your cake that you were baking, Rob, in that time period, when we're talking about that, a man should not wear anything that alludes to a woman, nor should a woman allude
Sure.
to anything to a man. I'm paraphrasing, but at that particular time, this is what was taught to me, is that everybody wore a robe. Everybody. Because we're talking about ancient Palestine, talking about Bronze Age, Iron Age Palestine. And according to that time period, a woman who did not have a veil was considered a woman of leisure.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more so to say that if you do not want to actually equivocate yourself as a lady to a woman of leisure, that you should not wear clothing pertaining to a man, which is just a robe without a veil.
What does that say about men wearing women's clothing? Like if he didn't, were they men of leisure?
They were a man of leisure.
Leisurely men.
Right. And if you and if anyone wants to call me, I'm at 555-777-9311. No. but in that part, I would agree my panelists, like, okay, good on you, Pastor, for being more progressive than some of your other Christian followers. But in this particular case, I'm kind of like what James Baldwin said. And this is what you mentioned in a bit, like if you specifically like AJ and some of the other panelists, if you're going to follow like some of it but not all of it, then you should just go ahead and just throw out the book. And one of the things that James Baldwin said, and I'm going to find it momentarily, and I should have had this like up and running, but that would have been too much like right,
Yeah.
that would have been too much like right. But he said that if God cannot make us larger, freer, and more loving, then it's time that we got rid of him. But you, dear viewer, don't get rid of us. Just click here for more nonprofits.
Hey, welcome to another segment of the nonprofits. And Eli Slack is going to take us on a step in the right direction. Go ahead, Eli.
So in 2021, the Southern Baptist Convention had just under 13.7 million members. And over the past 4 years, that number has fallen by just about 960,000 to now just over 12.7 million members. Pastors boast about how new member baptisms are increasing, seemingly to provide the illusion that things are not only well, but flourishing. But after losing almost 500,000 members in 2022, they've never fully recovered from the pandemic and continue to lose about half that many people each year since. I wouldn't be concerned, though, if I was the SBC, because what's 1 million people when you've got 12 more of those? This story is from The Friendly Atheist by Hemant Mehta on May 1st, 2025.
Well, I mean, if you've lost 1/12 of them over that short of a period, that might be something that might be a little bit alarming, Oh, one of the things that I do find funny about this story is that you see so many internet Christians on TikTok, YouTube, and other platforms, social platforms, who keep telling us over and over and over about how fat Christianity is growing, and obviously they're ignoring all of the data. I mean, I like all of the data. I've actually had this very conversation with several Christians online, and they're totally convinced the church is growing. And to be fair, and I mean, we even had the conversation, I'm not sure if on the show earlier this week or it was in between tapings, about how Christianity is growing in Africa. Protestantism is replacing Catholicism in many places in South America. But here in the USA, the churches are definitely shrinking and have been for decades now. I don't even know where these people get this. Jason, I know you've been keeping an eye on Pew Research polls related to this topic. Do you have any news or views on that research?
Yeah, I think I might disagree with you. I think a lot of what's going on with the Southern Baptist Convention, what we're seeing is people dying. Honestly, the SBC is generally stocked by a lot of older folks, generally my grandparents who have passed age and older, and a little bit younger, late 60s, early 70s, 80s. So we're seeing that happen a lot. Also, the church is growing exponentially globally. I say, we talk about Africa, but we forget that this is a global world. So when you look at the Pew Research, it's not only Africa, but it's the majority of developing nations versus developed nations. The majority of developing nations right now are experiencing not only a population surge, but that correlates to a religion surge. And it's very fundamentalist, traditionalist, authoritarian religiosity that is proliferating. Pew Research views, I think by 2060, again, you can go on it, so please don't quote me. So I'm just a guy pulling it out of my brain or ass or whatever. But religion is a dominant force in this world. Also, I don't think it matters that adherence to a specific denomination is depleting, because when we see the current social shift and political shift and who people are listening to and adhering to, it is a cult of personality that is fueled by a non-denominational fundamentalist foundation. So I think any belief that religiosity is lowering and or losing traction, I think is a uninformed belief, and I think it is inherently false and can be easily demonstrable and should be feared.
Good points. I can't argue with that. Well, I could, but you're bigger than me, so. John, I was looking through your notes and I noticed there was a quote from a really wise and super intelligent person in there. You want to talk about that for a moment? Not the quote or the quote, not the incredibly talented person who made the quote, but the quote.
Okay.
itself.
Well, he who shall remain nameless. I will paraphrase in my own words. And that for a long time now, this particular individual of my acquaintance has been saying, we are witnessing the desperate attempt to cling to power by religion as it enters its dying throes. And after what Jason just said, actually, it doesn't surprise me that the nations that have been dealing with this evangelical, authoritarian religious thing, other than Islam, which used to be the fastest growing religion on the planet. I don't know if it still is. I think there's a few others that might be making headway. But it is hard to say that religion is dying. But I think in the developed world, it is, because people are just figuring out that there's not a lot of truth value to it, and they're eventually, as we've seen with a lot of the people I've seen deconverting or starting to deconvert, the reasons they have for doing that are fairly valid. So I think that what we're going to have to do is we need to allow people to see whether or not this religion they're doing is valuable enough to them to forego the truth of what their life actually is. But we also have to keep pointing out that it's not helping. These are some desperate people in some of these countries, and desperate in a way that Americans just cannot understand. U.S. Americans cannot understand. If you've been in any of these places, you'll see what I'm talking about. I have lived in other countries, and I can tell you that unless they're a developed world, it can be pretty rough. And that is the understatement of the year. The fact that people take solace in that horrible condition by a religion, or if that religion gives them some advantage in the political power structure they're in, so that they can pull themselves out of the shithole that they're living in at least a little bit, or maybe get another meal out of it, because they live meal to meal, not day to day. I think that it's a tragic situation, but if a religion can give them some sort of hope, then I'm not so sure I'm against that. As a humanist, I think people need to grab onto whatever they can in those situations to pull themselves out of it, and to help people around them pull themselves out of it. And we should be doing an awful lot more to do that.
I was curious, John, so I looked it up, and Islam is still considered the fastest growing religion, but it's mostly because of higher birth rates. So
that's what I've been saying.
Yeah, not because of conversion. And interestingly enough, though, 77% of new converts into Islam are Christians or ex-Christians. Well, I thought that was kind of an interesting statistic. Although I don't know what it means.
It's a power-up move.
But it's an interesting
Power-up.
No, it's a power-up move. It really is due to the concessions given to men and authority and family structure. It's a power-up move with more authoritarian liberties. That's what it is. Yeah.
Which Christianity has gradually lost compared to Islam. That if you go back into an Islamic situation,
if you read
got it all back.
If you read The Temptation to Exist by E.M. Chiorin, really good book, one of my favorite books. He discusses kind of the rise and fall of civilizations and power structures and different structures within the structures, and it just follows suit. E.M. Chiorin, The Temptation to Exist, hands down. It's one of the few. I've read it over multiple times. It's an amazing book.
So. The title is so cool. I love that.
The article, and Eli in his opening mentioned that there was a 10% rise in baptisms. Now my first thought was, okay, so Baptists had 10% more kids, right? I mean, just because you baptized your baby doesn't mean they're going to stay a Baptist their whole life. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, so as I understand it, Southern Baptist Convention is that baptism is a conscious choice. I think Baptists don't baptize babies. They don't accept that. And if
that's fair. That's and
I was raised Southern Baptist.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood that.
No, fair enough. But I think too, though, that I think that I agree that the rise in baptisms is a non-data point. Like it's a non-issue, because basically what they're doing is they're like, we're losing numbers. Either it's because their members are passing away, or people aren't joining, and they just never came back after the COVID pandemic. Whatever the case is, they're like, we need a way to lock in some of these members. If we pressure them to get baptized, then we can pressure them to be here. Like, you kind of committed to this now, so you're a member of the church. So I think it's publicity. Basically, it's internal publicity to be everything is fine, to not encourage others, or to not give others the idea of also leaving the church.
One thing that I think would be interesting, and I mean, this is just speculation, but I grew up Southern Baptist, and a big part of Southern Baptist kind of lore is the whole idea of rededicating yourself to Christ. The idea of backsliding is a big part. So it would make sense to me that during COVID, if people, quote, strayed away from God, that you generally you go get rebaptized. You do it in front of people, because it involves a lot of doing things in front of people, holding accountable. I grew up again, that's how I grew up. So it would make sense to me that if people slipped away, quote unquote, during COVID, and they're rededicating, they're doing baptisms, it makes sense. Is it sort of like a rebirth? It's a rebirth. It's just a ritual that seems to be kind of typical within the Southern Baptist community. There's a lot of social shaming involved, and you always have to tell everybody about everything about you, even though it's not really the things you did, but it is, but it isn't. It's just, it's a whole game. So it's kind of like cleaning your slate. Yeah, it's just married couples who do their vows again in 10 years and then do their vows again in 10 years. And hey, I just want to let you know that I'm still with you, babe, type of thing. Yeah. That's kind of what it is.
Jesus's forgiveness wore off because they didn't give enough money to the church in a certain amount of time. So they need more of Jesus's forgiveness so they can keep giving money to the church.
Or, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what it truly is. But the way you think it is that you're the one who wore off. And the reason you don't feel it is because you need to rededicate it and you were backslidden and you have to get right with God. And it's all these little catchphrases. And then you have to go up and like humble yourself in front of the congregation, where really it's narcissistic shaming technique. It's just a way to devalue you
back into your heart.
Yeah, by prostrating yourself in front of people and letting some person tell you about yourself. And yeah, it's really fucked up. I don't like it.
Like, put your body fully underwater. That makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, let another person push you underwater.
Let God
it's a total
waterboard
kink.
you.
It's like sub kink shit, man. It's just nobody really. It's like voyeurism and sub kink stuff, and nobody wants to admit what it really is.
Waterboarded for Jesus.
Sounds hot. I mean, he was a carpenter and he was a Mediterranean guy, so I'm sure he was fucking ripped. Try to do was fucking sexy, but it's neither here nor there. I'm getting distracted. Sorry.
I really like this article. It was pretty comprehensive. One of the things I think Hammett really summed up the whole thing, I think, in one sentence when he wrote, instead of addressing the actual problem, the SPC's members are focused on how to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. I thought that was a pretty good quote, but he does go on to list several things, but what do you all think is responsible for the overall decline in the SBC church attendance in the USA?
I think they're busy on the internet with their new religion. I think all they're doing is just playing musical fucking chairs at this point. I don't think there's any room to celebrate. I don't think there's any room for optimism. I don't think that we should even think these people are not Christian or losing any faith. They're just buying into the new thing. They're modernizing their beliefs. Also, there's a die-off of people, but yet religiosity is booming. Immigration is booming. Globalization and time-space compression is booming. So we can't view this as like a rock or an island. This is a global community with no borders at this point. So what we're seeing is more people at home, but they're still obsessing over their religious fucking algorithm that is at this point religiously charged in the United States. So, or politically charged, but politico religio, however you want to put it. So all they're doing is just shifting chairs. I don't think there's a decline. I think there's an increase.
We know there's a decline though. I mean, we do know. I mean,
there's a decline in adherence to a group.
Yeah, I know, but the amount of nuns has risen considerably over the past few decades, right?
Not no belief.
Doesn't mean they're not religious.
They're not affiliated.
You point that out the most, Kelly.
But that's what I said, the decline of the church.
The church.
I didn't say the decline of religion. Yeah. I said the decline of the church. So
yeah, the decline of the church really means nothing. At this point, it's probably even scarier because I would rather a church body overseeing some people. When you go rogue, you start doing a bunch of weird nuanced shit, and that's where cults form. Because you take the original thing and then you bastardize it and make it like a cunt hair different this way and a cunt hair different that way. But that's how you do fucking cults. So all we have now are a bunch of fucking cults everywhere, which eventually merge into a cult of personality. The religiosity, if anything, increases at that point because you're stuck in a ball of reinforced dog shit.
That's one way to look at it.
Eli, what do you think is one of the things most responsible for it? The decline of the church.
I'm not sure that I know that. I know like the numbers.
What I said was church attendance. Actually, going back and looking at my notes.
And I'll answer that because it's quicker, but I have something to say about what Jason said too. I think that Hammett gave a really good kind of breakdown in the article that he wrote about it. You know, in between 2021, they had the 13.68 million. In 2022, it dropped by 450,000 roughly, and then by 240,000, and then 260,000 in the two succeeding years. So, and then the number, I don't think it remains at 12.7 for so far this year, roughly. So I think the big part of it was the COVID pandemic, and people have just, as Jason said, they're kind of like modernizing. Like people started doing virtual online churches. They're like, wait, I don't have to get up like 2 hours early to get my whole family
I don't have
ready.
to dress up.
Exactly. I don't have to iron these clothes. I don't have to come home and like, you know,
in my
wear these
sweats.
clothes a few times and then like steam press them or dry clean them so that like it's
I don't
just
have to
more
be the
convenient.
object of all the gossip.
Exactly. It's more convenient. It can be more comfortable and more, you know, at home, worshiping at home, right? So that's what they're doing. But I think that the decline in the numbers, their power is in their numbers, right? So as Hemant mentioned, the SBC is responsible for like mission trips where people go and like build houses, but only if you learn about God first, as if they've never, like they don't worship Yahweh in South America, or you know they lobby against anti-LGBTQ, or sorry, they lobby against LGBTQIA plus people, against women and marginalized groups and all these things, reproductive rights. So the thing is that, and why I said at the beginning that if half of the SBC churches close down because they lose too many members, that's going to be their least profitable half. And they're still talking 6.3 million people, right? In their most profitable churches. And Southern Baptist churches operate independently of the convention of the SBC. So the power, the SBC's power comes from the money they get from their churches that all operate independently, and they can kind of just change what they're doing to fit with what people around them want and still be a part of the SBC and still send that money back. And I think if they start bleeding for money and they really need it, they're not going to like pick and choose. They're going to pick and choose a lot less what their churches are teaching if it's good at getting.
Oh yeah, that's a really good observation, man.
I want to give John a chance to answer this question since we're running out of time. John, what do you think is responsible for the decline in church attendance?
I think everybody's kind of covered most of it. I think the decline in church also is that we live in a much more computer and electronic driven society, and it's always getting people to think in new and different ways. So anytime you're not having a structure that is fundamentally stable, then things are going to fall away, and people are going to find new areas to do that, like Eli was saying, you know, online or something like that. But as that changes, that's a different environment. It's not the environment that that particular religion grew up in or evolved in. It's now where you can see that it's not going to be the same religion at all. It's, you know, and what it turns into could be even scarier than the one you got, but it's not going to remain the same.
Agree.
And that's where we're seeing now is that, yeah, a lot of people aren't affiliating with a particular church or religion, but then what are they doing with all those questions they had, right? Are they actually looking into them, or are they finding another dogma to follow? You know, so it's like, what's easier, doing your own science or reading somebody else's take on it? You know, I'm afraid that people are going to get sucked in to a lot of very charismatic people and go down an even worse road than we've been on.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, some great insights there. Hey, I want to remind everybody, if you're don't have anything to do, you can always go check out the 24/7 AXP chat or AXP live feed on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. There's a live chat there. That's why I thought chat. There's a really cool group of people that hang out there. I do too as well sometimes. So come and hang out with us. And if you'd like to see more of the nonprofits, because who wouldn't want to see more of me, you can click right here.
Like and subscribe, folks.
everyone. Welcome to the Nonprofit. So 20 plus years since the Spotlight scandal came out, the Catholic Church is still trying to deny justice for victims. And the Trump administration is now backing this. EJ, let's take it away.
So today we have a story that shocks no one and that speaks volumes about the church. Given that they have so many abuse scandals and even more cover-ups that we don't know about due to the insular nature of the church, is this bill blocking a good idea? Today we'll explore it from all sides, both atheist and theist, and hopefully we won't have to convince you how horrible this truly is.
So this is going to be a very fun article, everybody. I'm so excited. I love talking about childhood essay.
Have different
So
definitions of fun.
that being said, Stephen, I'm going to start with you, my friend. What is your kind of, disgusting vibe at this particular article? Please explain.
Well, yeah, like the idea is that as it stands right now, anything that is confessed to a priest within the context of a confessional, that is sacred. It's God's will that you cannot violate that, which gives shelter to people who pray or people who put children at risk. And so there is a push to say, well, no, I'm sorry. If someone confesses, the fact that children are at danger, you have a legal obligation to report that to the authorities. And they're giving leeway, they're giving latitude to these priests, saying, okay, you don't need to come to court, you don't need to make a statement or anything like that. You just need to notify the authorities, and then they'll take it from there. They'll dive in. And the church is saying, nope, sorry, we have special rules here. If something is confessed within the confessional, then that is sacred, and the priest cannot break that sacred trust. And if they do, we're kicking them out. So it's just not only is it placing dogma ahead of just common sense, and actually is putting priests, the safety of priests, the well-being of priests above children who are in danger. And that's we shouldn't be surprised by this, right?
So, I mean, you're Canadian. So, being from our wonderful northern neighbor, thank you for being an emotional support Canadian, by the way. How do you feel about the federal government actually kind of stepping in and being like, yeah, this is perfectly acceptable for us to support the Catholic Church rather than victims? And right. How does that kind of how do you square that, living outside of the United States and your feelings of the sense of justice that is definitely not happening now?
I should, yeah, I'm very curious. This is clearly an American perspective, but because this is so much bigger than nations, this is, the church doctrine, which is a global institution. I don't know. Now I'm really curious if it is any different here in Canada, but by all means, no. This is how systems of predatory systems are insulated from justice and from actually caring about the children that they're supposed to care about. Apparently, all life is sacred, and yet in a situation like this where that child's betterment is in danger, it's just ludicrous that any government would stand aside and say, well, you know what, you guys make your own rules in this one area where our citizens are in danger. And it boggles the mind.
To be fair, all lives are sacred until as long as they're in the womb. That is very on brand for a Catholic. So I'm just gonna point that out as a former Catholic. Anyway, EJ, what was your kind of feelings on this article?
So I'm sure as four atheists, we can all point out how disgusting this is. It's worse from a Catholic perspective. So, if I might go on a small tangent and tell you a quick story. So, let's say a child goes through abuse at the hands of a trusted adult, and that adult goes to the priest and confesses. That priest cannot and does not go to the police due to fear of excommunication, which might mean going to hell. However, if they don't go to the police, that kid grows up and resents the church. They didn't stop an act so horrible as sexual abuse when they could have. So they become an atheist or a pagan or some other community outside of Christianity that is condemned to hell. The abuser, they remain in Catholicism. So, doctrine states, abuser goes to heaven, victim goes to hell. How the ever-loving can they call that just? There is no... There's no justice in that.
So let's say you're going to save the church, and you've been taught that the path to salvation, even after abusing someone, fuck you, by the way, if you do that. What does this say about salvation if you can just go to your priest and they, say if you, our Father, say some Hail Marys, and your soul is eternally saved, even though you're a piece of crap, and what does that say about the church incentivizing silently victims and not letting them get their day in court, not getting them to talk about, civilly or on the judiciary level, how justice is going to be served?
Well, it shows, I think, for one, that this is an incredibly outdated system. Yeah, this might have worked. Well, it didn't, but this, for argument's sake, might have worked 2,000 years ago or about 1,500 years ago when the Catholic Church was formed. But this doesn't work now. Today, we know all the effects that abuse has on a person. And as I'm sure all of us can say, the effect of deconverting, how stressful that can be, all of that compounding on a victim because a 2,000-year-old church decides that it wants to protect pedophiles and abusers over the victims is insane. It not only brings into question the morality of the church, but also the morality of the priests who are wearing the cloth. How can you call yourself a pillar of the community when the people you are protecting are actively hurting your community?
That is a good question, and I think some people need to be asked that question. So, EJ, I elect you to do that. Anyway, Sydney, I would love to hear your perspective. Please share, my friend.
So first, I would like to say that, in my opinion, the Catholic Church was outdated 1,500 years ago. Just saying, but. Besides everything that was said here by our friends, I would like to just give a sense of comparison by explaining how it is in France. So there is no law specifically protecting priests from having to disclose sexual abuse on children, but the current jurisprudence allows it. Priests who denounce such behavior are, however, legally protected. It cannot be excommunicated in France for that. Although no such case has ever happened in France. On 4 years ago, almost, a report from an independent commission estimated that 216,000 people over the age of 18 had been victims of sexual abuse by the Catholic Church in France, out of a population of 56 millions of people above the age of 18. And this institution is where the rate of sexual abuse on minors is the highest outside family. So this has to be added on top of all the abuse that we are aware of and they were aware of and never reported. So if you combine all the data, that brings a lot of pain to a lot of children, basically. And yeah, like I said, the Catholic Church was outdated 1,500 years ago. I don't understand how because the thing is, this is not the institution policing itself. It's states outside the institution that have to police the institution. And this institution hasn't shown in, again, 2,000 years that it's not willing to police itself unless it has to, and it is forced to. And so it's the most criminal organization on the planet. And it will be still for decades to come.
So just in France alone, there's 216,000 victims estimated. So, and this is that's just France. And we know back in, the early 2000s, when the Spotlight scandal, there were thousands and thousands of people that had been abused within the Catholic Church. My CCD teacher, when those allegations came out, unalived himself. So this was something that, definitely affected, even my local community. So given that, the current legal loopholes that are allowed to terrible human beings, do you think that they can be legitimately defended? Because to me, I think that anyone that defends this type of crap deserves murder hornets in his pee hole. So I would love to hear your perspective, Cindy.
No, I think it's an outdated principle to believe that priests have some moral superiority that gives them the ability to manipulate this information in a proper way. Like, priests are one of three categories of people who cannot be forced to report crimes sexual abuse to children. It's lawyers, doctors, and priests. And I understand it on the other two categories, but it doesn't mean anything anymore today, especially with. In Europe, the priests have a very, very low footprint in terms of power, in terms of representativity, in terms of all this. So this needs to go. Also, I would like to add that on top of the victims that are still alive today that can be counted, as you alluded to, there are all these. People who were victims and who are not alive. Like, how many children is it in the Ireland scandal with the nuns that just let babies die because they were born out of wedlock? How many? 3,000 or 4,000? So yeah, the number is most likely much, much higher.
And also,
like,
can
I can I?
No, you're not allowed.
Please let me not put too fine a point on this.
Go ahead, say things.
This is a tax-funded system. Our tax money is supporting this system. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that this isn't just like, oh, the Girl Guides or the Boy Scouts or the bowling team. Our tax money, the fact that they have their charity status means that our money is supporting these systems that are not protecting its citizens. And I think we need to readdress this situation. Like, I can understand that the churches and the Catholic Church is possible of doing some good, but we really need to assess how much evil they're doing and how much we as citizenry want our tax dollars to be supporting those organizations.
So I have opinions, but EJ, I know you're chopping at the bit. So EJ, please share.
The fact that not only our tax money goes to the Catholic Church, but it's an international organization that has moved priests around to hide abusers is not only unconscionable, but I would go so far as to say that it's well overdue time for a full stripping down of the Catholic Church and an investigation, like, internationally into all the big players within it. Because the fact that this happens at small local levels is not understandable, but it is predictable with any institution that has a central person in power. But the fact that they are so often protected says that the problem must go all the way to the top.
Well, yeah, and
Well,
it's
yeah,
an
I
organization
mean-
made up of white men that's worth $3 billion.
Yeah, what could go
and,
wrong there?
and numbers are declining, you know, so that's another thing that's
Thank
going on
God.
as well. I know, right? So thank you, Lucifer. Anyway, so that's
Satan.
okay. And let's just take a pause, okay, about like what this article was actually saying about the Department of Justice, the civil rights investigation that's going on, which announced that investigation into the law asserting that it may infringe on First Amendment rights of clergy by compelling them to violate the confidentiality of confession. Now, I want to point out, if you are a teacher, you are a lawyer, you are a counselor, you are a psychiatrist, if someone says that they're going to cause harm to themselves or to somebody else, or there's a report of harm to like children or minors or people, vulnerable populations, you are required by law in the United States, you are required to report that. Now, we're going to give these wonderful little special exceptions to some people that wore a collar and proclaim that they talked to God in a room. Great. And Magic Smokes decides who's going to be the next pope. Great for them. Now, Cindy, hi. Given this kind of wackadoo system that has been set up by the Catholic Church, how do you feel about the Department of Justice talking about confidentiality in regards to child abuse?
I think it's silly. I think no profession on the planet should have the ability to hide sexual abuse on a child or on even an adult. I don't think it's morally justifiable. I don't think it's still caused by this special aura, I would say, that the religious has in our societies, and it will take a lot of time before we can get rid of it, and in the same time get rid of all the exceptions and special rules they've been benefiting from in the last 1,500 years. But yeah, it's not. I understand that. Yeah, no, I understand that the U.S. is going slowly towards a religious government, almost a theocracy, but there's so many issues right now in the U.S. that it's hard to say how they can get out of these issues, specifically this one.
I don't know how you can defend the indefensible, but people are going to do mental gymnastics, and it's going to happen. It's disgusting and terrible, but we see it all the time. So, like, I am the only American on this panel. All of you foreigners,
Shame.
the nonprofits this week. I know you can shame me. It's fine. It's a kink. Anyway, so that being said, so. I'm going to turn this over to you, EJ. As a foreigner, you live overseas in a wonderful country that is not the United States.
Yep.
Like, are there similar laws that protect, like, the Catholic Church? And where you rest your head?
As far as in Scotland, I don't know if there are any laws that require them to report it, mainly because in Scotland there is a big, there's a lot of sectarian abuse between Catholics and Protestants. So legislating quickly becomes a very, very big issue. However, as far as I'm aware, there isn't anything that says they should mandatorily report. However, I have heard of a few cases in Scotland of them telling the authorities. However, where I live specifically has a lot of vigilantism. So a lot of times there's a lot of places like that in Scotland where they don't tell the authorities, they let it be known in the community, and the community sorts it out.
So that being said, do you think there's too much of like this in boy club of it's kind of like the mob, everybody kind of protects each other, and then if you kind of squeal, you're a rat. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, a bunch of old Italians who use violence to get their way. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, that feels very mob-like. So that being said, Stephen, hi.
Hey, hi. Just to piggyback off that point there. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask you to do that.
I'm stomping all over you. I'm so sorry, Helen. But just to tie into that point, in like this is like broadly applied to confessions in general, right? But in the instance, and it doesn't have to specifically be about the church protecting its own perpetrators. But in the event that a priest does have, heaven forbid, something to confess to another priest, they're going to get an understanding ear, and it's just going to all stay so insular. So it's not even about protecting children in general, but it's so tied so deeply. Like, we know that, like we've said over and over again, we know that the church isn't capable of self-disciplining, self-regulating, and like this whole idea of just like, trust me, it's fine. Like, this is how priests can protect priests, and like a couple Hail Marys and some rosaries just should not be enough.
You would think so. Okay. So I want to circle back to Cindy, because I know you have some opinions. So I would love to hear any final thoughts you have on this wonderful conversation we're having.
Yeah, to come back to what Stephen was just saying, it's important to remember that the secret of confession is only when the individual confesses to the priest. Once the priest tells it to other people, including other priests, then it's no longer the secret of confession, and it's no longer covered by the specificity of the law. So the moment the priest tells it to someone else, even if it's a cardinal, a priest, or the pope, then that person is legally bound to tell it.
And there you go. Now, I know that we have a lot of wonderful viewers that also think that maybe we should be looking at religious structures about how we're talking about abuse to the most vulnerable people in the population. So if you want to know more about this and other wonderful things that we got to talk about, click on another video and like and subscribe and do all the things.
We are heading now to Oklahoma to talk about Superintendent Ryan Walters and what he did this week that was weird, heinous, and cruel, and just downright obnoxious. Kelly has the story. Kelly?
My top favorite elected religious bigot, Oklahoma School Superintendent Ryan Walters, has tried to break the U.S. Constitution once again, this time claiming that people pointing out that he is breaking the law are, in his eyes, breaking the law. Walters is claiming that the Freedom from Religion Foundation, whom he calls radical atheists, are attacking individuals, teachers, and students, a claim that, of course, the FFRF denies, and there is absolutely no evidence of. Last month, the FFRF did successfully sue Walters and kept him from spending $3 million on Trump Bibles to put in every classroom within the state of Oklahoma. This lawsuit, filed recently by Walters against the atheist organization, really looks more like retribution for that success over the superintendent's religious policies than it does look like something that is, constitutionally legal. However, Walters has already shown he is more than willing to put the Bible before the Constitution in Oklahoma's public schools. Now, you don't need to be a lawyer. You don't even need to have ever watched a show on TV about lawyers to know that this lawsuit is a joke and cannot gain any traction in the U.S. federal court. This story is from The Friendly Atheist by Hemant Mehta from April 2nd, 2025.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I'm going to stick with you because I think that you alluded to this in your introduction. But, why do some political leaders, especially with Mr. Walters, frame church state, or as I was recently told, religion and government separation as an attack on faith?
Why do they see it that way? You know what? I don't know why they see it that way. I understand that them seeing that way is what is becoming a large problem for us in many places, like Oklahoma. We're having problems with in Texas with the schools there, in Louisiana with the schools there, where they now have to post the 10 Commandments in all the classrooms. And I think these people see this as a win over secular society. Like, they took prayer out of school back in the 1950s, and we're going to make sure it gets back in there, even if we have to do it little by little by little. I mean, they chipped away at abortion rights for 50 years until they got what they almost have and completely what they wanted. And they're still working on that. But it's the same type of strategy. We're just going to chip away at it. Chip, 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 chip. Nobody notices the chip. Everybody notices when you knock the arm off the statue, but a little chip off the bottom of it, nobody notices until it's too late.
Yeah, and they're doing it little by little, like you said. Here in Texas, they're doing the same thing. The 10 Commandments, the Blue Bonnet curriculum that has a lot of like biblical stories on it. It passed. It's actually on there. So, I mean, religion just does not belong in public spaces, especially in tax-funded places like schools. And I think Ryan Walters is confusing what freedom of religion means. Like, it doesn't mean you're free to bring your religion into all of these places, right? Freedom of religion means that you can practice whatever religion you want as long as you're not shoving it in other people's faces. Like, freedom from religion is just as important as freedom of religion. So
I think that when we're looking at some political leaders like Ryan Walters, and I think that this is one of the reasons why we cover him a lot, is because I don't really believe that they understand that the freedom from religion is also a protectant for the religious. Because what ends up happening is that you do not have government, the state, the nation, coming into your institutions to tell you how you're supposed to practice your said religion, or put stipulations on you on how your religion is supposed to go. So it's protecting the religious as well as us who happen to want to live our lives secular. We don't necessarily have to be concerned with religious edicts, institutions, and the like dictating our life. But unfortunately, people like Ryan Walters and other Christian nationalists who have been elected into office are blurring those lines, and other institutions that prop them up are blurring those lines so that they can now dictate, no matter what your belief is, or even if you are not necessarily a Christian or a believer in Christ or anything like that, how you're supposed to live your life. This is the problem. And it's even creeping into our curriculum. You notice, like, I'm pretty sure that because we covered this before, in 2023 and 2024 is the most that you will see, like, different institutions actually spending money on school board elections. Like, record amounts of money being spent on school board elections because they want to put people into, and when I say they, I mean Christian nationalist institutions, want to put people into those seats that are of their ideology in order for them to influence curriculum to be able to indoctrinate kids. Get them while they're young. This is why Ryan Walters is pushing Bibles in school, specific Bibles with the Constitution or the preamble or whatever the hell was in front that was leather bound and all this other craziness. I was like, can you imagine a kindergartner like walking around with this big old leather bound Bible inside school? I'm learning to read, mama. Like, you know, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And now that this is going to be the thing that's going to be influencing like what they're being taught, it's insane. But I know that, Rob, you mentioned that you don't necessarily believe that this is real. Can you just like expand like on what your thoughts are when it comes to this whole shebang?
Yeah, ultimately, Ryan Walter confuses me because I'm genuinely curious. This isn't a bit, like, if he understands what the protections of freedom of religion are and things like that. Like, generally people are not that stupid, especially if you become a superintendent, even though it's possible to have that happen. So what I absolutely don't want to do is just like make fun of a dude or tell him he's dumb. But like, as he keeps coming up, I actually don't know if he's villainous and monstrous or if he's just this abjectly stupid. Like, it can only be one of the other. So what was happening specifically that came up is some of the, at least one teacher was specifically doing a Bible reading, a prayer before every class that was not relevant to the material. And since they're a school which receives government funding, they are not allowed to push any particular religion. And since you can totally study religions in school, you should. You cannot give one more of a mouthpiece as if it has any more credibility or realness to it. So this wasn't like, oh, some of the students wanted to hold a prayer sometimes, and the Freedom from Religious said no. The school staff was literally putting on prayer with the students. This cannot occur. This is a strictly, obviously, there is no two ways about it, illegal act. Cool. Okay, so we're there. This is wrong. Now this guy comes in and says, they can't tell us to stop. And I'm like, my dude, yes, they can, because it is clearly illegal. There's no wiggle room here. So at some point, I have to stop believing that he's this stupid, because he can't be. He must be monstrous. I have found this to be evil with the amount of times he brings it up and refuses to change his behavior. This is wild to me.
Rob, you just say that what they were doing was illegal, and you shared just a little bit of what the story was. Let me share just a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Is it that from what I read in the article, in at least one instance, a student actually read Bible verses to the whole class, like in front of the class, for the whole class, right? And then the district also, the whole district, not just one school, was beginning the school day with mandatory student-led prayer over the loudspeaker but this was after the first period would start. Therefore, like, everybody was forced to partake in that. Like, you couldn't just get out of it because class had already started. So you would probably get in trouble if you wanted to get out. Like, if it was something like a moment of silence, that would be legal. So what they tried to do to get away with it was like they would instruct students to who were making all these announcements to call it a moment of silence or prayer. But it wasn't done quietly. It was followed by the student making the announcement, praying over the intercom for the entire fucking school. So, like, it was definitely not secular, and it was definitely illegal.
I think that what we're dealing with is that the right is using, and I think that you guys probably remember this case with Joe Kennedy, who was a teacher. He was a football coach in Alabama, who was marching or telling his, he was leading prayers rather on the 50-yard line after every game, even though his team was not a winning team. I repeat, the team sucked, like never won a championship. That all the praying in the world did not help their playing. Nope. The praying did not help the playing whatsoever. And this and the school ended up discontinuing his contract when his contract was up. They did not want to renew it, even though they told him multiple times, like, hey, Mr. Kennedy, tell you what, pray, but can't you do it like in the locker room and not on the 50-yard line when you're done? Because he was not just, he was telling the students and inviting others, even from like the other team and other people who happen to be around and other students, to come out and pray with them, take a knee, do all this other bullshit, right? So it was a case that the appellate court said, no, the school was in the right in order for them not to renew the contract. There's no rights that was violated here. If anything, you messed up because you were at a public school and you blurred the lines of the establishment clause. That's what you did, Mr. Kennedy. And so they were in their right because they tried to work with you within your means and you decided to do your own thing. Goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. All the way up to the Supreme Court. Felt it was so interesting that the concurrent address from none other than Brett Kavanaugh was his religious freedom practices were violated. So the school was made to put him back into his position, even though he moved all the way from Alabama to Florida, almost over 100 miles away.
And what did he do after he got rehired?
He was there. He quit.
He quit.
He quit.
He quit.
Yeah, he quit. I think it wasn't even after one game.
Yeah, I think it was one game he played.
Yeah. After one game, he quit. So, I mean, like, so it was a waste of time. It was a waste of taxpayer money to even have this case. It shouldn't even been taken up in the first place. But even though he did all of that, it was more so a thing of, hey, now the Supreme Court has said that
Chip,
right.
Chip.
Yeah, we're chipping. We're chipping now. We're chipping now. Now the Supreme Court has said that, hey, he was able to do this because his religious freedom practices were violated by the school. Then now all the people who are paying attention to this particular case, who are in the Christian nationalist sphere, is saying, okay, let's go ahead and push this. Even Justice Sotomayor said the lemon test, look it up, guys, the lemon test is dead. But I want to hear more from Kelly because I want to know about the oppositions to Walters and how it actually may be affected in the better or affected in the worse.
There has been quite a bit of opposition to Walters' policies throughout the state, especially in Tulsa, where last year 3 candidates who were elected to the city school board were openly defiant of Walters' policies in public. There's also been a lot of criticism from the indigenous peoples who are trying to keep their traditional beliefs with their children, because they're getting bombarded with Christian messages at public schools, which is really the very place where something like this shouldn't be happening. So there are some bright spots in opposition to them, people who probably deserve more support. Here's something that sounds bad, but it might really be good in the long term, in the long run. His term in office is up next year, and so is the governor's term. Now, there's been rumors about him running for the governor's office and instead of rerunning for a superintendent. And quite frankly, I'm not sure he can win that post with his radical far-right religious views. They do tend to not carry over to higher state offices. Oklahoma might be a little bit different, but I still don't think he'd be able to win the governor's election. He is in his first elected office altogether, so people don't know what they were getting for the most part when they elected him the first time. But now that his views and his ideas are out there for all to see, he's been criticized all across the country. I'm pretty sure he just won't be elected as governor, let alone school superintendent again. So hopefully, we'll see him maybe try to run for that office, and in the process of running for that office, not be the school superintendent also.
Well,
So
you
keep our
you
fingers
hope
crossed.
you
Yeah.
hope, but the issue is that when people like Trump can run and win, then what's happening is all of this that he's doing is meant to galvanize and virtue signal, I guess,
Like I
in
said,
the opposite
Oklahoma,
direction.
man,
Yeah.
Well, I
It
would
is-
have to I just have to reiterate that we here at the Atheist Community of Austin does not actually endorse nor denigrate any type of candidates who happen to run or actually are in office at this particular moment in time. I think that when it even comes with this particular case, like, we are looking specifically at the policies that this particular person is doing. Now, whether if they are going to go for a different office or not, we don't know what would happen as far as like them actually occupying that office. But if they win, if they lose, or even if they run at all, it will be up to the people to decide if they're going to be in office, and we would not endorse them or de-dorse them. I don't even know if that's a word.
Oppose.
Oppose them, yes,
Or
oppose
oppose them. I like de-dorse. But all words are made up. Regardless, yes, endorse or oppose them, whether they're going to be in office or not. But I did want to ask a question to the panel in of itself, and I'm going to start with you, AJ, then Kelly, and then Rob, because at the end of the day, one of the things that we have to look at when it comes to the possible indoctrination or the not indoctrination of children in schools is those who happen to be in the classrooms that's teaching them. So how can educators uphold constitutional law without being caught in the crossfire of political theater? AJ, please start, then Kelly, and then Rob.
Well, I mean, any way you look at it, there are clauses in the Constitution regarding religion, and one of them is, like you mentioned earlier, the Establishment Clause, and it says that the government cannot promote or endorse any particular religion, and this includes public schools because they are, government spaces. So public schools just cannot lead or require students to participate in prayer or display religious symbols and any of that stuff. And this also includes teachers. So if teachers want to follow the law, they can say, you know what, I am not gonna teach this curriculum that you're giving me that has biblical connotations. I'm not going to display these 10 commandments on the wall because it's against the law, even though they want to make it the law that schools need to display the 10 commandments, whatever. It is against the Establishment Clause. So yeah, they can definitely cite the Constitution to defend their decisions to oppose those type of things.
Thank you. Kelly?
I don't think they can not get caught in the middle of it. That's the problem. I don't think it's possible for them. And in fact, in Louisiana, I mentioned that the 10 Commandments law that they passed have to be posted in all the classrooms. There is a lawsuit against that law, and it was brought by a teacher who was actually the teacher of the year in Louisiana. So, I mean, teachers are on the front lines here, and they probably deserve more support than they're getting. And I always said that about teachers. Teachers definitely need more support than they get. So, Rob?
You're right. Ultimately, how can educators uphold constitutional law? By doing their jobs. Without being caught in the crossfire by political theater, they cannot. The problem is executing the Constitution as it is written, or executing the spirit and the understanding of how the freedom of religion is supposed to be executed within the country, when that very execution is itself the thing being targeted. Then when the teachers follow the law, they are in fact putting themselves into the politicalness, the political theater of it all. It cannot be avoided. Therefore, don't try and stand strong. Do more. Be loud. You can't avoid it, so win.
Yeah, we understood that.
Yeah, yeah. I've traveled around the country quite a bit over the last couple of years, and everywhere I go, people are always complaining about stuff. I hear them talking about LGBTQ rights, about inflation, about DEI, the wage gap, affirmative action, all kinds of stuff. I hear people complaining about all the time, you name it. And I think it's time for Americans to shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, get off your asses, put that game controller down, and go out there and start changing the things that you think need to be changed.
Well, I will say this, people. Change does not happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. But one thing that you can do, dear viewer and listener, from the bottom is click here for No Nonprofits.
Welcome to the Nonprofits. Again, for the third and final segment this week, we set aside the active combat zone that is the American educational system and look at something a little bit more concrete, global population. There can't be any disagreements on that, can there? Eli Slack, please tell me there are some things in this world we can all agree on.
Absolutely. And now it's time for the song of my people, science. Josiah Slang Ritter, a postdoc researcher from Aalto University in Finland, and some others are suggesting that the Earth might contain significantly more humans than we think. Ritter's paper, published in Nature Communications, took data from rural dam projects where companies know exactly how many people they displaced to build the dams because they had to pay each of them for displacing them. And then they compared that data to official estimates of populations and found that official estimates undershot the more precise dam project data by between 53 to 84%, depending on the area. Now, on the surface, this seems to me like solid reasoning, but experts are cautiously skeptical, noting that while there's good reason to invest more research into rural populations, having a correction on the order of a few billion people is a little bit outside of the realm of reality for the first preliminary data. This story is from Popular Mechanics by Darren Orff on June 21st, 2025.
All right, and we're going to come right back to you with the questioning beginning with Eli, the science guy. Eli, Chris, where the hell is Eli's theme song?
Scott, get out of your dream world. You know we don't have the budget for that kind of a thing.
All right.
We'll talk
Well,
about that.
Eli, anyway, as a fellow nerd, what's your take on this?
It's interesting to me.
That was horrible. That was a bad joke. Sorry, please continue.
It's interesting to me. I like the method. I think he knows or suspects at least that the companies building the dams are going to have more precise and verifiable, honestly, records about how many people were there because they had to pay them. So they needed bank accounts, they needed addresses, they needed to know how many people were in each home and all things like that. So when you compare that to estimates from organizations like World Pop or GWP, Grump, Landscan, and GHS Pop, which sound like
Grump.
international, Grump, sound like international like pop bands in a way. But he found this discrepancy. He said, hey, look, and it was significant. And so it got published. And it does matter because we allocate funds to rural areas based on their population densities. So if we're underrepresenting them, we are underserving them. But I think it's also a good representation of a scientific method because we saw in the article he had some criticism from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. A researcher named Stuart Geedle Baston said, essentially, I'm kind of extrapolating from what he said, but just because it's compelling, that doesn't mean that it's true. It's something. It's common for it's common to find something and think like, oh, like this is if this is true, this changes everything. And the first step in that is follow that data, see why you have that discrepancy before you start making like grandiose claims.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Stephen, what's your take on this? I think that you have a slightly less enthusiastic perspective here than Eli. So what can you add that as a counterpoint?
Yeah, no, I think this is really good science for when you're sitting on the shitter. I think it's really entertaining for
Isn't
a couple
that when
minutes.
the best science happens anyway, right? Isn't that kind
Isn't that where you guys read for this show?
right?
No, like again, like this isn't my field of expertise, but it seems to me that there are snags, there are unaccounted shortcomings in this approach. Whether you're looking at areas that are specifically affected by dams. So that isn't a fair representation of the global rural population, right? Areas where there's going to be dams are areas where there's going to be water, and there's going to be already an abnormally large number of people. So that kind of tracks with the data, it seems. And like 35 areas is really a niche area, and especially when it's like river based areas, 35 across the global, like that's not a very in-depth
So you want a
population.
you like a big sample size is what you're saying. Stephen Harder loves a big sample size.
The bigger the better. Absolutely.
All right.
That's what I'm all about here.
All right. Good to know.
Yeah, like, and if like, and again, like I can't be an expert in everything. I can't be an expert in many things. And so I rely on experts who actually have dug into the material to know their shit. And if the experts aren't convinced, then I find I'm like I trust them until they have when they have good reason to draw a red flag around it, then that's, I think, is a great time to draw more conclusions, not to start investigating, but let's get a more robust understanding.
Fair point. I have to hand that to you. So as a math teacher, of course, this article is really like just gold for me, right? It was basically, we're talking about people that messed up the math because they were making incorrect assumptions. And I love throwing those kind of problems out to my students to not only to practice the math, and then they have to use math to justify their arguments, but then to realize that we all make assumptions in all cases. And so we need to make sure that we are aware of the assumptions that we're making, and we need to test those assumptions. So here's a situation where we had a lot of money and effort and science has gone into things like predicting world population, and we discover a flaw in our system based off of faulty assumptions. That is just the math teacher motherlode right there. It's just perfect learning opportunity. So I'll ask Eli here first. So what lessons can we learn from this, either generally about being good scientists or specifically about this issue? What do you think we can learn here?
I think in part, we can't always trust our measurements, and it's either because these international pop bands are incorrect about the world population, or because Lang Ritter.
If you can't trust an international pop band, who can you trust?
Maybe Josiah's Lang Ritter. Maybe he's got the right answer, but
maybe he's got Grump backing him up, though. So
he disagrees with Grump.
Oh, right. Well, of course,
there's a discrepancy. But that's what I think is when you find a discrepancy between your data and other data. Somebody got it wrong. Don't assume that it's not you. Right. I think it's just as plausible for it to be you as it is for it to be the other guy. And when it's you or everyone else for the past several decades, you have to realize that it's more likely for it to be you that is wrong. But like I said earlier, find why there's a discrepancy. Find like what would I expect to see if there was 50% more people on the earth than I think that there are, and then go out and look for that. And if you can't find that, let's reconsider.
Right. Yeah. Maybe ask wwhy we didn't find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we find it? Is there some reason we wouldn't have found that? Is there something else that might that I might see in the result? Like you can keep investigating it, but it's not quite time yet to start drawing conclusions and like rerouting resources based on one study.
Right. I think one of the themes that Eli was just talking about is the idea of intellectual humility. We need to be open to the possibility that we've made mistakes because we're human beings. We have egos, we have predispositions, we have biases, and so forth. Stephen, I wonder if you could comment briefly on what are your thoughts on the role of intellectual humility and that kind of thing in the scientific community and in general as we as the human species learn about our world and our universe?
Yeah.
Just a tiny little question there for you.
That's great. One of the best parts about deconstructing and stepping away from the faith is the humility that I was able to tap into, because when I was a Christian, I didn't need to be too humble because I had all the motherfucking answers. And what was interesting about looking at this article from a meta perspective is how it reminded me of that desire to feel like, oh yeah, I know something that other people do. I understand this world in a way that the rest of the world doesn't understand. I'm a little bit special, right? And I think that's what makes an article heading like this one extra alluring, extra appealing. It's just like, I have this information that the rest of the world doesn't know. Like, we've been doing this wrong the whole time. Like, I'm just a sucker for that. And that was a big draw for me. And my spirituality was just the fact that I had special wisdom. So yeah, like humility and being able to understand why we're wrong and is a huge thing. It's the only way that we can move forward.
Yeah, and the way that you were phrasing that just triggered something in my brain. So I'm going to ask Eli this additional question here. Conspiracy theories. So how can we link that? We've been talking about intellectual humility. Stephen was talking about being privy to inside information or having the inside scoop on the quote unquote real truth. TM. How is this kind of thing? Do you think is this fuel for a conspiracy theory, or is this going to maybe debunk a conspiracy theory, or how is that going to link in there?
I've already got one. As soon as you said conspiracy theory, between then and now, I've got one. So yeah, absolutely. Like it could. I mean, I don't believe it, but you can come up with one that easily. The extra 4 billion people are the ancient race of aliens that built the pyramids and went underground to hide, and now they're coming back up and they look like humans. Naturally, that's why we didn't find them over the past decade's worth of data. So yes, absolutely.
Something like that, I suppose, is bound to come up. There's no, I mean, it seems like it takes very little excuse, just a tiny little kernel of an idea, and then somebody's making a conspiracy theory about that.
Yeah, and archaeologists or like historians 10,000 years from now will find that I was the one that started that because I'm the first one to say it on the internet.
All right, Eliism.
That's what I'm going to be responsible for. And I'm like, man, all right.
Right, that's your legacy, Eli, right there. Is
Congratulations.
Of all the things I've said others. But, I think, yes, it's absolutely, it can be a breeding ground for conspiracy. But it's just another reason people say, oh, you can't trust scientists. Scientists have an agenda. Scientists are controlled by their benefactors. Donors is the word I was looking for. I don't know how benefactors came to me easier than donors. But it's this idea that the scientific community is they or them or like the government, and whatever they are saying can't be trusted. So like if they are saying it's raining and you stick your hand outside and you feel the rain, you're going to be like, no, they're probably just, spraying water on my house with a hose to make me think it's raining, because I'm going to believe anything except
weather manipulation, I think is the words you were looking for there. Weather manipulation. Yeah. Because we know, of course, that's a thing now, right?
Yeah. They're changing my climate.
Yeah, exactly. So Stephen, I wanted to, Eli was talking about how we might be undermining trust in science, or at the very least giving ammunition to those who want to foment that kind of distrust in science. Do you think? I mean, because when I look at this, I see this as a strength of the scientific process. The idea that we can correct ourselves, and you were mentioning earlier about how you had this unassailable, knowledge in your brain when you were religious. And I mean, how does that play into this? Is this going to be the crack in the dam that's going to break and all science is going to come crumbling down? Or is this just a reassurance and reaffirmation of the strength of the scientific approach? Is this a good or a bad thing for the scientific method and for those of us that care about that?
Well, I think the system doesn't need to be perfect. If there are inconsistencies, if there's questions, that's signs that this system is working. It's when everything works out just accordingly, just right, just perfectly. That's when flags need to be going up and saying, like, wait a minute, how do we falsify this? If everything is going just right, something isn't right. That's a sign of the matrix right there. Yeah, so I think being able to ask these questions, the only way science gets better is through more science, right?
Right.
So yeah, bring on the questions, and no question is too hard, because that's we as a species are going to evolve, and it's going to be through these kind of processes.
Yeah, I really like the way that they presented that in the article itself. It wasn't a finger pointing. It wasn't a blame game. It was here's what we did. Here's what was wrong about it. Here's how we can correct it. I mean, it was very practical and very straightforward. I didn't get the impression that there was a lot of egos involved or anything like that. It was just a straightforward problem-solving approach, which really appeals to someone like me. We have a little bit of time left. I knew that we were going to have a little bit of time at the end of this segment here, so I have an extra question prepared here, and I want us each to put some deep thought into this. This is very critical. So here's the question. From the standpoint of pure musicianship and skill with their instruments, what is the greatest rock band of all time? Defend your answer. Eli, the science guy, go.
Done. Already got it. I'm just going to go with the scientific consensus, Queen. And I don't need, because of Live Aid, I don't need to justify that, but I can justify it without Live Aid. So we have, obviously, first, of course, Freddie Mercury. If you're talking about mastery of an instrument, this is a guy with a 4-octave vocal range, which if he's not, I'm not confident enough to say that he's the only singer in the last century or whatever that could do that. But if he's not, he's one of 5 or something. So that right there by itself. And not only he, but the band itself has such a range of style, from arena rock, We Will Rock You, to opera rock, Bohemian Rhapsody, to I don't know, proto thrashers, and I don't know, Want Somebody to Love was kind of disco, or kind of I don't really know. So they have a range. They have
they did the Highlander soundtrack, right? The Highlander soundtrack, the whole thing, all Queen.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. I haven't seen Highlander, so
you're out of here. You're out of here.
Yeah,
man.
I am out of here. That's true. There can be only zero me. But additionally, Sir Brian Howard May. Yeah, Sir Brian Howard May, PhD in astrophysics, and Commander of the British Empire is another title that he has.
Wow.
Built his own guitar with his dad out of a fireplace and a sewing needle, and that's it's a simplification, but it's not it's true. And then after the band became famous, he then later was like, I'm going to finish my PhD in astrophysics, which he put on hold so that he could go be Brian May of Queen. I don't know a lot about drums or rhythm or percussion.
I noticed you're not talking a lot about the rhythm section here, so we got to...
I feel, I know that, each of the band members contributed to their songs. I know that Roger Taylor wrote "I'm in Love with My Car." That was all him. He's got a pretty solid falsetto himself. Powerful backing vocals for Freddie Mercury. So that was a good pairing. John Deacon wrote "Another One Bites the Dust" and "I Want to Break Free." So 2 other fantastic songs. Got tight bass lines. It's just they genre hopped. I think they were masters of their instruments. And
strong case. You make a very strong case, Eli. You got us out of the gate with a big answer there. Stephen, what are your thoughts? Best rock band, pure musicianship and skill with their instruments, including vocals.
Like, obviously the answer is the Tragically Hip, but as 2 Americans, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'll try to speak in your language.
Okay.
The White Stripes. Jack and Meg White, they're divorced and they're still in a band together. That's huge. Meg, she plays the drums and she just focuses on like keeping a steady rhythm. And that's huge. And then Jack, he plays guitar and other things, and he also sings. Like,
I'm a big Jack White fan. I think the weak spot in the band, if we would call it a weak spot, I think is Meg, of course. I think, but he's kind of the pulse there. Of course, I could be wrong.
Maybe you felt the same way, and that's why they're divorced now.
Not the drummer to be the pulse.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm going to throw my answer out there, and although I'm on the verge of changing my mind here after hearing, it's hard to argue with Freddie Mercury. In fact, in my book, he has to be mentioned if you talk about best musician on any instrument at all. I think Freddie Mercury's definitely in the discussion
100%.
there, and of course Brian May's no slouch. I would say Rush, of course. I think they're just the holy trinity, right? We got, speaking of bodacious vocalists, we got Geddy Lee with his very distinctive voice. It annoys the hell out of a lot of people, but he's got a lot of skill there. Freddie Mercury wasn't playing bass when he was singing, although he would mess around with the piano a little bit. But Geddy Lee's on vocals, on bass, and on keyboard all at the same time, right? And then, of course, Alex Lifeson is routinely brought up when discussing the top rock guitarists of all times. He's got such a huge range and the master of the lengthy solo. And so I love Alex Lifeson. But of course, you have your Freddie Mercury. I have Neil Peart, and he is definitely a master musician, routinely thrown out as possibly the best drummer of all time. I don't want to hear about John Bonham today, but Neil Peart he just mastered. He would learn different styles. He learned how to play jazz drums. He learned how to play all different kinds of drums. He would rehearse even on concert nights. He would rehearse before concerts and so on. He would start working out weeks and months before they went on tour, just so he could have enough stamina. And my favorite Neil Peart song ever was during an interview, and they asked him, "Do you ever get sick of playing Tom Sawyer?" And he said, "I never get sick of playing Tom Sawyer because every once in a while I play it perfectly." And I just loved that. It just totally summed up his attitude towards music right there. And so I love that. But good effort from Stephen there. The White Stripes, that's pretty damn good White Stripes there. Queen, though, you're definitely threatening for that top seat, but I still think Rush might have pulled it out here. Let's hear it from all of you out there. Leave a comment below with what you think is the greatest band on pure musicianship and skill with their instruments ever of all time. And if you want to hear more of us just talking about random shit, then just click one of these links.